This episode is part 2 of the conversation with Alex Horsman. We talk about link building in a slow yet highly effective way based on ideas from Trust Me, I'm Lying. That's a book by Ryan Holiday. If you missed part 1, be sure to check it out. We talk in depth about email marketing, one of the sales and marketing techniques that I really love, and really focus in on selling and converting leads to buyers. And Alex has a huge amount of knowledge around that area, and he's been able to work with big brands to actually test that stuff out. So part 1, really, really cool, and it helps you understand how you can remove some of your dependence from Google. But today we talk about link building, and it's pretty cool. I haven't heard anyone explain their link building strategy in this way. So let's get to the interview now. Let's move on to your link building approach. And you mentioned that this seems to work pretty well to get like brand mentions and with media in general. So what's the approach and how'd you get the idea?
So I read a book by Ryan Holiday called Trust Me, I'm Lying. And I believe the tail end is media manipulation or something along those lines. And he opens the book kind of explaining he was trying to get his client into the media. I think it was Tucker Max, who was a pickup artist of sorts. And he had just come out with a book, and there was a billboard of him, Hollywood or somewhere in California. And Ryan Holiday actually went to the billboard and spray painted it and called him a misogynist or something along those lines, and then took a photo, sent it into a journalist and said, look what people are saying about Tucker Max. And then the journalist wrote article about it, and Tucker Max's popularity blew up, and he had such a successful launch because of this, because the buzz just started going, because they said, somebody said he was a misogynist. Why did they say that? Well, because of what he said in his book. Well, what did he say in his book? Now you just distributed that across thousands and thousands of journalists. So I say all that because Ryan outlines in this book kind of how media works in terms of, you have your top tier publications, say Fox, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. Those are your tier 1. Tier 2 is going to be, he describes them as like Breitbart, Think, Gawker Media. They're still big media websites. They're just not the TV channels, right? And then tier 3 is the blogs underneath that. And that's everyone else, right? That's me, that's you, that's anybody else on the internet or producing media. And the way it works is tier 1 gets news from tier 2 websites. Tier 2 websites or media get news from tier 3. I can never reach out to somebody at Fox and probably get a reply. I can probably never even reach out to somebody at tier 2 media sites and get a reply. I just haven't really been able to do it often. What I can do is reach out to tier 3 media people all day long. And if I can get continually shared on their media, then it works up the chain, right? So then somebody at Breitbart or Drudge Report sees it on the tier 3 media. And then once I'm shared enough on that tier 2, then it eventually makes it up to tier 1. And I can get more tactical and explain the entire approach, but that's the holistic view of it.
Perfect. And we will get into those details. I've seen, if people look around, you will see this. So I was doing research for another video for one of my other podcasts, Mile High Fi, and they had a story on Yahoo News, right? So I read Yahoo News and checked it out. And then I went and I was like, oh, this was syndicated from somewhere else. And it was basically either a tier 2 or a tier 3 article that honestly, it wasn't that good, like so many articles that you see. And then side note, I had, a company that does like PR outreach type stuff. They were like, hey, we'll do it for you. So I actually have like a mention on NASDAQ.com and Yahoo Finance with a quote that I didn't say it, but like just a PR company did it, right? So NASDAQ.com, which is insane. And then Yahoo Finance is pretty big, but like I said, they end up just syndicating from all over. They have writers all over the place. And then you quickly realize like being mentioned there, I could put it on my website. It was featured there, but it doesn't really matter that much. Okay. So tactically, how do you do this?
Cool. So what I outlined, and I'm going to use what I outlined in my newsletter just because it's on top of my mind. I did it. Let's say you're a conservative news blogger. And this is always top of my mind because of work I did with ammo.com. They usually needed to be in that conservative space. And so our goal is to get on Fox. Okay. Well, we can't reach out to somebody on Fox. So what's below that? Drudge Report. Okay. I still can't reach out to somebody on Drudge Report. So what's below that? What I do to find good tier 3 media sites to reach out to get on Drudge Report is I plug in Drudge into Ahrefs and I look at their outgoing links. And then looking at their outgoing links, I'm going to filter those websites from lowest DR. And then let's say the outgoing link count 10 plus or 20 plus. You'll have to play around with that number. But this tells me two things. It tells me low DR sites that Drudge Report keeps linking to multiple times. It shows me that somebody at Drudge Report really likes grabbing news from this site. So I can't reach Drudge Report, but I know they like Doug's show podcast. I can reach Doug. So that is who I'm going to go and reach out to. And typically there's 5 to 10 to 20 of these small little blogs. And if you can build relationships with these people, get mentioned on their sites, especially multiple of their sites, not just one, Drudge is going to see you. That journalist at Drudge is going to see you, and they will share your work. And then from there, once you finally get shared, you reach out to the journalist that shared your work, whether it be LinkedIn, whether that be email. Now you have an in at that tier 2 site. And I think it's worth noting this is not a quick game. It takes a long time, right? Like you have to get shared. I think by the time we finally got mentioned on Fox, we got probably 10 to 20 articles shared multiple times on these tier 3 blogs. And then finally, 2 or 3 of them made it up to tier 2. And then finally one made it to the cream of the crop. So it's a long-term play. And then honestly, I never got a contact at Fox, even though they shared the story. But I was able to at least get tier 1 and tier 2 stories and contacts over there.
Got it. And what was the success rate for just getting on tier 3? Like you're saying, you have to get some opportunities, you have to get the at-bats. Only a couple are going to convert. And then, you just have to do this sort of at scale. So what was the success rate? How'd you take the overall approach for topics as well?
Yeah, I was not, the way we were doing it was very philosophical pieces of content. It was not keyword optimized whatsoever. This was way less of SEO play and way more of a media play. Do you get SEO benefit? 100%. You get links out of it like crazy, but you also get hundreds of thousands of page views if you make it to that top tier. So we had to come up with a story that was interesting. You can take a book out of what digital PR people are doing. I think that though their topic ideation is really creative. To be honest with you, that's less of my skill set. I'm not the best. I'm not the most creative. I'm more analytical and numbers driven. But it was always philosophical, questioning something. We would do trending topics, something that's in the news, but we would almost write as I would say, newsworthy, right? These are news sites. Like it has to be in the news, but we would question things and we would take a hard stance. And I think whether it's political or not, it seems like I'm talking about politics, but that's just because that's where my knowledge and background was. Whether it's political or not, I think having an opinion and creating a stance about something is vital because sure, some people are not going to like you, but there's going to be a lot of people that like you and they're going to share the shit out of your stuff. So I think that is one thing to keep in mind when it comes to topic ideation. Go ahead. Sorry.
I have a quick example. So the research that I was just doing was based on a study. So there are surveys and different studies that are happening all the time. And I mean, we see this often with media because they'll take like one sliver, one little finding from like a self-reported survey, and then they'll say exercise is bad or whatever. Like, exercise causes heart attacks. And it's like, well, it's for, this specific group that they surveyed, and these are super unhealthy people. This is a real example, but the one that I ran into the other day, there was a survey of, I think, like 3,000 people, and they said the millionaires of the group felt basically identified as middle class, like a good chunk of them. So there were a bunch of headlines where it's like, millionaires think they're middle class. And obviously it's a little bit controversial. It like gets people thinking, and they react like emotionally quickly, which is what the news stories are going after. So my point is, you can go and reference the original research. So after I started looking, I was like, well, I don't want to see the kind of bad articles that are written for the, mass. I want to see the original research, which you can just go follow the links and you end up at the original research. Then you could write your own stuff and have your own stance. Maybe you want to go against the grain of what everyone else is saying. That way, like you said, I mean, you're going to piss people off, but those are the topics that media wants to cover.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, again, I mean, as real it is as it is, if it bleeds, it leads is a real thing still. And journalists, a lot of journalists are freelancers and they're getting paid per story. And if their stories can get more page views than the average journalist at the company, then they're going to keep getting work. And so they are very much incentivized to get these stories. So finding something that is controversial, I find has been, and again, it's not controversial for everyone. A lot of people agree with you, but having some sort of unique perspective and not like, don't be afraid to piss people off, as you said. That's our number one thing.
How does this actually work? So if you have a story or an article and you contact tier 3, do they, what do you tell them? Are you like, hey, here's an article I wrote? Or are you saying, hey, we have some information or an idea? How does that even work?
Yeah. So a lot of this goes back to my 8 years ago when I first got started with link building. I crafted really good outreach emails because there was no, or maybe there was, I just wasn't using. There was no Mailshake, there was no Pitchbox, there was no some of these automation tools for cold email outreach. So for me, it was a spreadsheet and the website, and I had to find the email address and write a detailed freaking pitch to this person to add a link. When doing that has allowed me to create really good email pitches. And so these tier 3s, there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat here. What I love doing is typically tier 3s are, it's a journalist who is doing this out of passion. Typically they've written a book. Typically they've, put something, maybe they have a donation button on their blog. Any sort of kind of, it's the not how to win friends and influence people, psychology, persuasion, influence the psychology of persuasion. Within the book, one of the rules he talks about is reciprocity. And so I always try to get that reciprocity initially, whether it's donating to them and then showing them the transaction ID and sending them a thank you email. Or if it's me buying their book, the best form of reciprocity is when it's not money. If you can buy their book, if you can that is a killer. If they have something that's like damn near 80 to 100% success rate. Even if I don't get the link, I get a reply. So that's typically in terms of how I the strategy for opening it. It's not always applicable, but I'm usually not leading with a story. I'm usually just starting a conversation and trying to build a relationship. And then the story will come. So I typically try and go build these relationships. If we have a story coming out in a month, go build the relationship now, because you don't want to come off as me, share my story in that initial email or that initial 2 or 3 emails. you really want to be focused on them. And, maybe that's promoting one of their stories within your email list. Maybe that's promoting it on social media. Maybe that's, buying their book. There's a number of ways you can skin the cat here, but that's what the initial process looks like, is just getting that conversation started and getting them to know you. The hard part for a lot of SEOs don't like getting on the phone or getting on Zooms or doing podcasts. So this would be, you kind of got to get out of your comfort zone. I think one of the best, my friends, he was a certified financial planner, and his link close rate was amazing. And the reason was because he just put his Calendly link at the bottom of every single email. And he was like, I'll jump on the phone with anyone. Because he was a certified financial planner. He does that all day long. And he was like, I don't care. I don't need I don't hide behind my computer screen and just email. So I think going out of the way to build that relationship is the first step, and don't lead with an article. Just lead with them. What's in it for them? Do something for them. It doesn't have to be giving them money. It works. Doesn't work as well as buying a book. Doesn't work as well as sharing a story of theirs to your email list and letting them know. Actually giving critical thoughts about their work, not just this BS, loved your piece. Okay, thanks. Like, actually read it. Like, these journalists or, these tier 3 media sites, they usually really care about what they're doing. And a lot of the times they're not getting paid a lot. They might be doing it completely out of passion. So when you can talk to them about something that they're passionate about, it goes a long way. So does that answer at least the initial aspect of it, of how I would start the conversation?
Yep. And what happens next? So you build the relationship, you guys have some communication lines open. So then what happens?
Yeah. So then the picture the story, right? But again, you didn't start out with the story. And from there, hopefully you've gotten this relationship with not just one website, but with 5 to 10 websites. And it's much like a product launch. Whenever you pitch your story, you're pitching it to all of them at once within the same day, because you want to get them all to share it within the same time frame, because that person on the tier 2 site, whenever they go and look, maybe they see it on Doug, but they didn't see it on Zach's, or maybe, they see it 4 to 5 different times. Then they're like, okay, let's pick this up. I saw the headline, I didn't read, but then I saw it again and again. I decided to read it. Wow, this is a really good article. Okay, yeah, now it's time to share. So it's as simple yet as complicated as that. It's really, when you talk about it, it doesn't sound too complicated, but it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of time, right? Building a relationship to where they are willing to share the story. That's kind of, I think, where the upfront work is. And also, again, as we talked about earlier, the topic has to be interesting. It has to be newsworthy. It has to be worth their time and related to them, right? Like, I'm not going to pitch a bunch of surfing news or tier 3 media sites about fishing, right? They're going to be like, well, this has nothing to do with us. So that's, again, why it's helpful to map all of this out from the very get-go. If you're, like, I used The Drudge because it was ammo.com, and that's all kind of like conservative media. But if it was, on the other side, liberal media, well, maybe you want to get on, I don't know, like the Daily Beast, I think, right? And so it's like, who is the Daily Beast linking to on a over and over again that you can build a relationship with? And again, this doesn't even have to be political. We've done it with surfing brands, for instance. Who is surfed.com or surf.com? Who are they linking to over and over again? So the work is really, I would say, almost in planning and reverse engineering where people are getting their news, and again, looking at Ahrefs. But then when it comes to the actual pitching part, if you have those relationships in place and if you have a good story, it's just like rinse and repeat. Try and hit them with a story once a week. That's good.
So with you mentioned the story, you knew there's something coming out. So is this like a syndicated situation where, like, you've published it on your site and then they write about it? Or are you literally writing an article and they're like guest post publishing it, or they write an article, or what does that even look like?
Yeah, we write it on our website, and then they either write a piece about it and link to it, or we let them completely copy and paste it. And then at the bottom, they just put this article was originally published on xyz.com over here. It's much less, again, for me, like after you get those initial shares, it's much less about link building in my eyes. It's much more about getting on those tier 2 and tier 1 websites and just getting media coverage.
Got it. Interesting. And it doesn't really matter if it's syndicated or if they write the piece. It just depends on their website, if it's their website, if they're being paid, or how they're presenting the information in general on that site.
Yeah. And also, it's their website. If they want to write a piece about it, I don't care. As long as it's mentioned or as long as it's somewhat of a focal point. Again, my whole goal is just to get it shared 10 to 20 times so that it gets in front of that tier 2 or tier 1 media. So,
what mistakes could happen? Obviously, most of the time, it doesn't work. You're just like, you're taking these shots and then it doesn't hit. And then all of a sudden, like, you're getting more traction. But like, even if you do get a successful, we'll call it a conversion, where they're like, yeah, we will do this story. What mistakes might happen that, make it not turn out like you thought? You don't get the page views you thought, you don't get the links you thought, that sort of thing.
We've got a couple good stories. I think we've had a couple stories that actually hurt us as a brand where some people went to the data and we were not 100% with the data and we should have reviewed it a little better. And we spent a ton of time on, but we just weren't 100% accurate. And that sucked because we made it pretty far with that piece. And it was an influx of views, but then customer support for the brand got quite a bit of emails as well and phone calls. So that I would say is the biggest thing, is just make sure that you have this stuff buttoned up. If you're trying to get on Fox News, be prepared to get on Fox News or any other big media brand. So that's the biggest one that's hurt us, is just not having our data as well as it could be. And then, I can't say whether that has long-term effects. I think people have a pretty short attention span and maybe they were pissed off at us for a week. But, if they go to other parts of the website, they see that we're not terrible people. But yeah, that's the biggest one that I can tell you we've run into.
And it wouldn't have been a big deal, except it was a successful campaign, right? And then it got picked up everywhere.
Yeah, 100%. I will say, once you build that relationship with the tier 3 websites, I think, again, we can get shared on those a lot. So the conversion for those is actually pretty high because you spend so much time trying to build that relationship. But getting that second push, that's where the conversion is just like, this might work, this might not work. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
Have you been able to get introductions from like the tier 3 to tier 2? How does that work?
Yeah, 100%. I actually have a couple of contributor slots on tier 2 sites, both underneath my name and quite a few pin names. And a lot of that is through introduction. And one thing, again, it's amazing what you can do if you just go into Ahrefs and look at their outbound links and do this on not just on a site level, but also on a journalist level. So if I'm trying to get on the KC Star here and I have a fishing website and I go and look at the outdoors section, I know the outdoors section will link to my fishing website. Okay. Well, I want to then go and look at all of the articles that Pete Davis, I don't know, the outdoor editor for the Kansas City Star, I want to look at who he is linking to, not just the KC Star as a whole, but who the heck is he linking to, and then build the relationship with those tier 3 media sites. And then it's usually just I don't know if I've ever had, actually I can say confidently, I've never had an introduction until a tier 2 media site has shared an article. I've been like, if I'm talking to Dave, who is the tier 3 owner of fishing.com and the tier 2 owner of KC, Kansas City Star here, the outdoor journalist, if he finally shares an article of ours from fishing.com, then I'll be like, hey, Dave, can you introduce me to Pete over at KC Star? they just shared our article. I just wanted to say thank you. And that's how that relationship typically looks.
Perfect. And I'll give, we're talking about like blog posts and written word, but a quick example from me, and then we'll start wrapping up. We've been sticking around for a long time here, but my other podcast, I have a co-host. He and I are writing a book on anti-productivity and laziness. And the thing is, we've had a podcast for 2+ years, 3 years now. 3 years. We've had a bunch of guests on. He's been blogging for over a decade. I have other podcasts and I've been blogging for about a decade. And the thing is, we've helped a lot of people out over the years. We have a ton of contacts. We go to in-person events, we go to conferences. And when we launched the book, not only have we helped a bunch of people, but like we have something interesting. People know us. We've built relationships for over a decade. So we should be able to get a very high conversion rate when we're like, we have this book and we're willing to like be on your show. You can have an excerpt, put it on your blog. Like we have all these different ways that we can approach it, but it's just through the relationship building. And we potentially can get introductions because we know a lot of people who know a lot of other people that may cover it. So like we put in all this work for years that should pay off whenever we launch the book. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's your network is your net worth, right? That's all I'd say.
All right. Well, as we're wrapping up here, same sort of question is the email marketing. Other details that we should think about when we're looking at this trust me, I'm lying link building approach and trying to really kind of manipulate the media in a way that is primarily through relationship building.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just everybody loves talking about in the link building world, loading up 10,000 emails a month and pitching all the time. It's a numbers game. I don't necessarily think it's it's definitely not a numbers game if you're doing it this way. It is in the sense of X amount of articles of yours need to be shared until you get picked up. But it's not in the sense of just blast out as many emails as you can. Like you gotta be slow, you gotta be methodical, you gotta build this relationship. Stop thinking about what's in it for you. You're never going to, this will never work if you use a dear sir, dear ma'am email. That's like, that will never work. This is not something that I would hand off necessarily to a super junior person. I would try and do this myself because also if they start sharing your stuff or if they're communicating, it's your brand, it's you, take it seriously. Again, if you make it, heed my words, if you make it to a tier 1 site and your data is screwed, be prepared. So that I would say that's my biggest tip is it's a little bit more of a slow and methodical approach versus a blast 10,000 emails with, to websites with good DR and traffic.
Right. Yeah. I hate that shotgun type approach. So good advice. All right. Excellent. Well, we'll link up to all the places out there for you, Alex, but can you tell us where you want people to find you and the stuff that you have going on?
Yeah, my newsletter, Shitty SEO Advice. I'm right on there each week. And then as well, LinkedIn, I'm posting on there multiple times a week, if not every day. So those are the two best places as of now.
Awesome. And what kind of work do you do just so people know if they follow you? I mean, maybe they sign up for the email list. Like what kind of stuff might you be able to help them out with?
Yeah, right now, strategy, really when it comes, a lot of people have been interested in this strategy and how they can fit it into their company or into their role. So I do a lot of link building strategy because that's where I spend a lot of time in the SEO world.
Got it. And you probably don't do the implementation. So you could be more of a visionary. You're like, here's a good strategy. You guys go work on it with your team or whatever.
Yeah, I have a lot of SOPs that I'm not afraid to share, because again, I've just been doing this for a long time and I can speed up the learning curve very quickly and teach junior employees and people how to get this implemented.
So if someone has like a small agency with a couple freelancers helping them out and they want to do some of this trust me, I'm lying, link building approach, you could give them some of the SOPs and kind of consult them like, hey, spend time here, skip this stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And we chatted on it for 30 to 45 minutes, and I could probably chat for another 2 to 3 hours. And I could go deeper depending on a particular project because, the overall strategy is there, but it does change based off what brand and what news stations you're trying to do this for.
Very good. Well, we'll link up to all your stuff so people can follow you. And thanks a lot, Alex.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Doug.
Thanks again for checking out this episode, and thanks to Alex for sharing his story. If you liked it, be sure to check out other interviews with people like Julian Goldie, Jared Bauman, Ricky Kessler, Jason Barnard, Spencer Hawes, and there are many others. Plus, I do some solo episodes, which are a little bit shorter, and usually I share some specific strategy or technique, or let's face it, sometimes I just ramble on, and those episodes are a little bit longer, but be sure to check those out too. If you do like the show, make sure you're subscribed wherever you're consuming this. It sends good algorithmic signs to the directories and the players that you use, and if you leave a review, that's even better. And really the best way to help out the show is if you tell a friend, tell someone that might find a specific episode useful, and just send them that link, and then hopefully they'll check it out. So thanks a lot for checking it out, and we'll catch you on the next episode.